Hello, you are listening to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
This podcast, this episode of Deeply Curious, we're going to be tackling the topic of work-life balance. Just what do we think about it? Can we even achieve it?
What is it?
What is it? It's a brand new year, guys.
It's a new year. You should probably figure these things out.
Yeah, because everybody knows that you can only decide to change things in your life within the first 2 weeks of January.
Right. If you haven't set your resolutions by January 15th, there's no hope.
You might as well just either
you have to wait.
Fall asleep for the rest of the year or, live a terrible life. Because there's the only two options, really.
Yeah. Deadline is January 15th.
Yeah.
So
I don't even,
wait, when does this podcast
I was about to say, I don't even know when this podcast comes out. It may already be January 15th.
Let's look. It comes out on the 15th.
Okay, well, it is today. Yes, it's a good thing you're listening to this because literally we are saving your life right now.
Today's the deadline.
This is like if you were listening to this on tax day and we reminded you that taxes are due today. Well,
exactly.
Resolutions are due today. If they come in tomorrow, sorry.
Sorry about you.
But before we jump into today's topic, we want to let you know and give a huge thank you to our sponsor, B&H Photo Video. B&H is a massive camera, video, pro audio superstore located in New York City, just up the road from us in Midtown. But the beauty of B&H is they have a wonderful superstore that you can come and peruse on your leisurely time that you're going to have because you're going to achieve work-life balance.
Right.
But if you haven't made it there yet, you can go to their website, bnh.com or bhphotovideo.com, and you can peruse the virtual shelves for all of your pro audio, video, and photo needs.
Yeah.
They
got everything.
Does that sound like a great infomercial?
Yeah. You do have a good infomercial voice.
I just need a bunch of stacks of boxes from B&H that I'm stumbling around with. And,
yeah.
Do you ever struggle with all of your photo, video needs and then drop them all? Be like, B&H
Shop
has
online.
Yeah, exactly. Shop online. It comes straight to your door from bnh.com.
There's our ad.
Anyways. Into the conversation. bnhphoto.com. Remember that. Hit them up. But now we're going to get into the conversation. Right before I do that, I'm going to tell you that you also go to shop.deeplycurious.fm and get yourself some Deeply Curious swag.
Ooh.
But since I've been talking about sponsors for a while, we're going to jump into the conversation. All right, work-life balance.
Work-life balance.
It's all you.
Oh, gosh. Well, first of all, I just want to say, Cody brought notes to this podcast, so
I'm a professional.
I feel underprepared. But I think I do best just winging it, so...
Well, yeah, I mean, I have achieved work-life balance.
Oh.
And so I wasn't, rushed into this.
Well, okay, let's just start there, though, because I think that's maybe a good place to start, unless it's later in your notes. I don't know.
Nope, I don't have that in the notes.
Oh, okay. No. This week, we heard our pastor said something along the lines of, a busy life does not mean it has to be rushed. Right?
A busy life is not a rushed life.
Yes.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a rushed life.
Yeah. And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, maybe that's my mantra for 2019. I think it's such a good way of looking at it, and maybe even a good way of looking at work-life balance, because just because it doesn't mean that you're not going to work, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be busy, maybe even all the time, but you don't have to feel rushed about it. There's a sense of calm to your work that I think maybe that's the point. I don't know, but work-life balance for me I've never known how to achieve work-life balance. It's very difficult for me. So I think going into this year, that's kind of how I'm looking at it, is I'm still going to be busy, maybe busier in some seasons than in others, but overall, I am not going to feel rushed. I don't want to feel like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this thing, then I'm going to be behind. And oh, I have to do this thing to stay relevant. Oh, I have to put out this many videos in order for people to, you know what I mean? I don't want to feel rushed behind everything that we're doing.
Right. And another thing with a busy life isn't a rush life is that in the conversation as we go on, none of this is about not having great work ethic and not working hard.
Yeah, it's not about not working.
Because, basically success comes to those who work for it.
Right.
But there is a shift, a pendulum shift, or there comes a time whenever you're going along that line of working really hard to achieve your goals that you end up neglecting parts of your life that you actually do have them as a priority, but you forget about them.
Right.
And you neglect them, and it ends up costing you relationally, financially, spiritually, emotionally,
whatever
in the future, because you're focused on this one thing in your life that, maybe you're doing it for, because that's the way society says that you need to do it.
Right.
And because you genuinely enjoy doing that thing.
Which is fine. Yeah. But I think, so there's a quote that I actually came across on me with my quotes on the internet the other day. And it's anonymous. I don't know who it's by. But it's by a professor. And he was telling his students on the first day of school. And basically he said, like, you can't help anybody else, or you can't be successful. You can't achieve what you're trying to achieve if you are sleep deprived, malnourished, and like unhealthy, like unfit, physically unfit. So, make sure, to like pay attention to, like, don't let go of what you want. Find a balance, breathe deep, all that kind of stuff. Basically the whole, like, don't be stressed as a student because it's not worth it. Like, you can't achieve what you're trying to achieve if you are unhealthy. And I think that is the problem with the whole conversation around work, at least in America. I don't really know what it's like everywhere else, but like, Americans really value work, and that's great. I think it does produce great work ethic in people. But work ethic is different than working all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
work ethic is different than workaholism.
Yeah. And you should rest, and you should take time to step away, because that's where, I believe, that's where creativity comes in, and that's where new ideas form, and that's where the joy of creating happens, in the space that you allow to just sit and, be bored. We've had that conversation on this podcast before, I think.
Yeah.
And that can't happen if you're always working.
And back to, the conversation of a busy life isn't necessarily a rush life. It is creating time, I think, for people. Mm-hmm. Because if you are busy and you have a lot going on, you have goals and you're achieving these things and you're chugging along and you have these meetings and all this type of stuff, but somebody, who you value calls you and like, hey, I could, use help, or hey, I'm going bowling, that type of thing. Instead of, if you're living a rushed life that you can't take the moment to pause and be like, oh wait, yeah, I would actually really enjoy spending time with this person. I do enjoy bowling, and I would like to invest time into that relationship, because whenever I do, I come away from it feeling more energized.
Right.
But if you're in a rushed life, you're like, man, I would love to do that, but I can't. I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this. People are calling me, all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And being busy is different than being rushed.
Yes.
Okay. The conversation of work-life balance. Mm-hmm. I have thought about it for a long time, and I obviously, try to work on and try to achieve said thing. But I heard something from a guy named Michael Hyatt years ago, and I really liked what he had to say about it, and I also implemented it into my life for the most part. I've obviously forgot in seasons and, remembered in others, and that's actually kind of part of what he says about work-life balance, and we'll get into that, but kind of the way that he looks at the topic of work-life balance is not necessarily that it can ever be achieved necessarily. You're not like working towards this end goal of when I get to here, that's whenever I can put a check mark next to balance. I now live a balanced life.
Mm-hmm.
And the metaphor that he uses is thinking about balance in the physical sense. So if you were to stand on one foot balancing, or if you were to go, to a slack line or, a ropes course or something, and you're balancing on it, you don't just like achieve balance. It is highly focused. If you're sitting there trying to balance on one foot, you're actively thinking about it and you're actively making adjustments in your body as you're achieving this balance. And it's, same if you were on a slack line or whatever. It's like it takes focused, intentional body movement and mind to really achieve being balanced. And so one of the things that he talks about is that, balance is not easy, and it takes work, and you have to live in the tension.
Yeah.
Like if you are living a balanced life, you are basically managing your priorities and managing the tension of all of your priorities. And essentially it's not a static thing. Balance is not static. Same in the physical sense. If you were standing on one foot, you're not static. You are actively thinking about it. And another thing to think about is whenever you kind of continue that metaphor, I guess, and think about highly focused work, it takes focus to balance, but also whenever you are fully present and you are highly focused on working on something and you cut out distractions, you can achieve what you want to do in half the amount of time.
Yes.
If you're trying, for you, it's like if you're writing an article, if you turn off everything and write your article, I'm just going to throw out a time frame and say it takes you 1 hour. It's like it's done. You did it. You were highly focused on that thing. But if you don't do that, and every time you get a ping or a ding and it distracts you, and whenever your brain tells you, hey, check Facebook, hey, check Twitter.
Yeah. I do know.
Yeah. Not only it takes you 3 hours to do the exact same thing that if you were highly focused, it would only take you 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's distracted work. It takes twice or 3 times as long as focused work.
Yeah.
And that is to say that part of work-life balance is to actually be focused and smart with your work, so you aren't constantly rushed. You may be constantly busy because you're a high achiever.
Right.
But you can be a high achiever, work smart, get everything done that you want in your life and your day in this hour if you actually put limiters on your life, if you actually say, these are my priorities. And I'll just use social media because I think it is a big topic.
Yeah.
And say, social media is, whenever I actually write down my life's priorities and I say like, make money or my wife, God, family, whatever it is, social media is way down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And yet I'm letting social media
right
take over like priority number 1 or 2.
Right.
Which then in turn makes me have less time for everything else, which in turn makes me live a rushed life instead of just, living a busy, productive life.
Yeah. One thing that you said that I want to touch on, because I thought it was really interesting, is you said balance is about tension or living in the tension or something. And it's interesting because I always think of when you hear like, oh, work-life balance, he lives a balanced life. It feels very zen, like it should be zen and like just nice. But the reality is that it's not, because everything takes intention, and intention is focus and like specific and like not zen.
Right. It's essentially like and I guess this can't be a blanket statement, but it's like if it's easy, then it's probably not balanced, type
Right.
thing. It's like,
Yeah, nothing good ever comes easy.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if that metaphor really follows through, but I mean, in my experience and listening to the experience of others who are much smarter than myself, balance is something that is hard work.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Right. I think that does play into what you were saying of like, if you write down your priorities and like social media is at the bottom, but you actually look at like what's eating up your time or what you're actually doing and it's at the top. I think that again goes back to the intention of work-life balance and like being incredibly intentional with every minute is so important, because if you're not, it's so easy to just go on autopilot and do whatever. Like our brains are good at like coming up with crap. And so if you're not being very intentional about your work and priorities and I don't know, I guess work ethic, whatever you want to call it, then yeah, like you will be working all the time because you've lost so much time to things that don't matter. Whereas if you're being very intentional about what work you're doing, you always have time for the other priorities in your life, I think.
Right. And back to what you were saying about with the professor and like your personal health and that type of thing, that is another huge thing with work-life balance is ultimately, even if, and I'm 100% talking to myself too, it's like, even if we don't ever want to think about our physical health and that type of stuff, no matter where you write down your priorities, if you actually thought about it, your number one priority is to remain healthy and to not die.
Yeah.
But if that is the case, then why are we eating the way we are? Why are we not exercising? Why are we not, remaining active and that type of stuff?
Drinking water.
And drinking water, because if you actually think that your priority is to be this high achieving, you want to accomplish these goals, your life's mission is to create this business, this whatever, if you die because you aren't doing right to your body, then you can't achieve that.
Yeah. Well,
if you're constantly sick.
I was going to say also your body can only handle so much. And so if you're eating terrible, drinking a lot of sugar, whatever it is, not sleeping, but then also forcing it into like all of this work and like non-rest, what do you think it's going to happen? Like it's going to shut down at some point, and that just takes more time away. Whereas if you maintain a base level of health, you can conquer the world, Right.
And it kind of goes, we a couple things.
Not that we are the people who should be talking about physical health. I'm not great at it.
That is a priority. Yeah, that is a priority for us this year.
Yes.
And something that we definitely,
I think is important.
That is one of the areas of my life that I have not had balance in ever.
Yeah.
I couldn't, other than whenever I was a kid and I was just a teenager and stuff but
when you're just naturally active.
As an adult with work and a life, I have not prioritized or balanced physical health in there
at all. Yeah.
But so a couple metaphors. One, it's just like on the airplane. Whenever they say, in the case of emergency, a mask will drop down. Mm-hmm. Put your own mask on before you help others, because you can't help others if you are passed out.
If you're dying from lack of oxygen.
Right.
Yeah.
If you pass out, you can't help anybody.
Yeah.
And another thing that we've talked about a lot on the podcast with mental health is the same thing. Mm-hmm. Of if you aren't taking care of you first, then how can you expect to help others? How can you expect to be who, you want to be for your family, for your employer, or whoever?
Yeah.
If you're not taking care of you first.
It's true. I think we very often forget that a part of high achieving, I guess maybe we call it that, is maintenance, is mental health, physical health. That includes taking time off and sleeping and sometimes doing things just to do them. There doesn't have to be like a work reason because giving our brain a break is healthy for it.
Right.
That's my whole spiel.
So on the road to achieving work-life balance,
Yes.
one of the things, the first thing, is getting clear on your priorities, is to actually write down what your priorities are. What are the most important things to you?
Mm-hmm.
Not what's the most important things in, your wife's life, your husband, your, employer, whatever. It's
society.
Yes, exactly. It's thinking about you, who you are, for you personally. What are your priorities? And so, as an example, for me as a Christian, I would love to say that my number one priority is my faith and my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one should be myself as my, body and maintaining the whole conversation we just had. And then it would be Sarah and our marriage. And then would be my job and my work. Or, I guess one that I forgot there would be relationships outside of our marriage and family, that type of thing. And so what are your priorities? And then what are you doing to make sure that those are your number one priorities?
Yes. Like, for example, this year, so usually I get pretty ahead of myself in goal setting. I really like goal setting. But I don't do maybe the deep digging. I like the idea, I make goals and I get really excited for a fresh start, but then it's like, harder than that, actually.
The ideal 2019 Sarah
yes.
is way different than the actual 2019 Sarah.
I make goals for the ideal, but then I don't consider what it will actually take to implement that, and that's where the ideal comes from, is like doing the work. So for this year, I did the same thing. I went goal crazy and I made my whole little magazine and I did the whole thing. But instead of like, I don't necessarily have an example, but instead of like just having the goal, I have like the characteristic I want to build in order to achieve the goal. So like in work, instead of it just saying like whatever it says, work this many hours or make this much money or whatever, it's create self-discipline so that I can do that, because sometimes I'm not great at self-discipline. So it's more about like what characteristic do I need to develop in order to achieve the kind of work-life balance that I want to achieve.
Right. Because
you can't be a high-achieving person and lack discipline or lack whatever. Discipline, generally. Like you just have to have discipline in every area of life or it's not going to work. But yeah, it's like examples like that is kind of, I think, that's what I'm focusing on this year.
Yeah. I think one good side note that that Michael Hyatt also talked about was that balance is not equal time.
Yes.
It's not about that, spending 40 hours a week at work means that now I need to go spend 40 hours a week with my wife, then I need to go spend 40 hours a week praying, and I need to go spend 40 hours a week. It's not about the equal time is not balance. Is it appropriate time is balance. And so spending the appropriate amount of time in each of these priorities is whenever you are, living in that tension of balance.
Yeah. Quality over quantity, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the second thing is to schedule time for the things that matter most.
This is, I think, another thing that we are doing, not maybe on accident to that, because I didn't know about that, but we sat down the first week of January and made an ideal, obviously you're going to have to shuffle things around sometimes, but an ideal schedule of our week and what it looks like.
Yeah. And like we easily schedule work stuff. It's like if if you have a meeting, you just write down in your calendar, like 10 a.m., meeting.
Yeah.
But we also need to schedule, 6 p.m. dinner with spouse.
Yes.
Or 7 a.m. workout.
Yes.
Or,
First time I've ever put that on my calendar.
Whatever it is, it's like these things that are priorities. You need to schedule the time for the things that matter most. And that goes into the third thing of establishing a set of non-negotiables in your life that are on the calendar, that are just a few things that let's talk about us and non-negotiables and calendar and things like that. So one thing that I started last year, and I'm keeping, and rolling it over, I guess. Like I like it. I like my life whenever I do this. Is a non-negotiable for me is I stop all work and all screen time at 8 p.m.
Right.
If when 8 p.m. hits, so if I have a video that I'm working on and I'm editing and it is for tomorrow even, I'll stop and I will just, there's a cutoff time and no screens after 8 p.m. and then I will just read or spend time with you, whatever it is, but just no. The hard fast rule is no screens after 8, but that also means no work after 8. Like sometimes I stop working at 6, sometimes I keep working and I end up working until 8. But the thing for me is no screens after 8, and that would be like a non-negotiable, that for me.
Yeah.
Another non-negotiable on our calendar is like church every Sunday morning. It's like that's not a huge time commitment. It's not like I said, it's not about the equal time, but that is something that is important to us. And so we have it on the calendar.
Right. And
that is something that is a non-negotiable. If something comes up at, 10 a.m. on Sunday morning, we will pretty much evaluate. The answer is pretty much no, unless it's something that is,
important.
far and above, like worth this 1 week of, whatever.
Right. Like I said, you always have to shuffle things around.
Right. And that's another thing with I think work-life balance in life in general is that you have this calendar that is the ideal, but just like life and any road you can be on, there's going to be detours, there's going to be things that slow you down, there's going to be things that are shortcuts, there's going to be, whatever there is.
Right.
But you just constantly have to be in the mindset of reevaluating. So last year, for almost the entire year, I kept up the goal of reading every day after 8 p.m. and I would read sometimes every morning, and sometimes every morning.
Yeah. Sometimes in the morning.
Yeah, sometimes in the morning. And so, but then in the last part of the year, I went on a huge work trip and I was gone for like a week. And whenever I came back, I had I didn't reevaluate and reassess and get back into that flow. And then I went on another trip after that, and that like killed me for the rest of the year. Like I don't think I did it like once after that trip. Maybe I did, but I don't like. It was definitely far in between like times that I did it, because those were detours in my schedule. It's easy to keep a routine if your days look the exact same, but then there are days whenever things are just completely out of whack, and if you don't stop and reassess your priorities and stop and reassess the calendar that you want, it is so easy to get sidetracked and just completely forget. Like, I just spent 7-8 months of this year doing exactly how what I wanted to do, and then this 2-week trip totally detoured, and now for the rest of the months of the year I like failed. Yeah. And so constantly reassessing.
Right. Because again, intention. Everything takes intention.
Right.
And it's hard. Like, it's not easy to be always on in that sense.
Right. And so back to the calendar. Like, it's easy to schedule the work stuff.
Right.
But we need to put on the calendar the things that we think matter the most. Schedule them and set non-negotiables. So like I was saying, church on Sunday. But then also our marriage is a priority. Like I care more about our relationship than I care about work. So why am I not putting as much or more intention into this relationship? And so a non-negotiable is like weekly date night, and it's like to make sure that we spend that quality time with each other.
Right. Because for a long time it seemed like, oh, we don't need to do anything about date night. We're married, no kids. We see each other all day, every day.
Right.
Like there's no need. But just because you see each other all day, every day doesn't mean you're spending time together.
Right.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
I also schedule my alone time.
Right.
I wanted to mention that.
Yes.
I put it on the weekly calendar, Sarah, by herself.
Yeah.
And it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
I might have to move the day every once in a while, but
because
I have always known that I need that, like I need time. But for some reason, I have a hard time taking that time. And so I usually just don't until I get like real bad. And then I'm like, okay, peace out.
Yeah.
And instead of letting myself get to that point, I'm just going to be proactive.
And because you know yourself.
Right.
And you know who you are. And you have intentionally made this space that is, again, it goes back to your health. Like in the same way that you would, hopefully we can schedule and actually follow through with, physical health.
Yeah.
Your mental health requires a block of time that is for nobody but yourself.
Right.
It is personal time.
Yes.
And then the next thing on the list is, I actually already jumped ahead, but is alignment. So focusing on realigning things, whenever things get out of whack.
Yeah.
And so, we already talked about that, but that is very important.
Yeah.
That you realign.
Right. Part of I think maybe it's a subconscious thing for the most part. I don't know. But I think a lot of times it feels like, oh my gosh, I failed. And then it's just like this whole negative track in your mind instead of, and you just kind of beat yourself up for it instead of just being like, nobody's perfect. Let's try again. Like, how many times do we start over on everything except for like personal things, like if you do something wrong at work one day, you correct. Like that's just how it is, and for some reason we're fine with that. But when you apply that to your personal life, we don't do that. We just like, well, I didn't do it, so I guess I'll just not drink water the rest of the month or whatever it is. Like, well, I don't understand why we do that to ourselves. Right. Me included. I'm very bad at it. I think like, well, I missed the gym this week. Guess I won't go for 10 months, like it doesn't make any sense. Probably still for our entire marriage, I was going to say for many years, but for 10 years now, in our marriage, we've done that with grocery shopping. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst at grocery shopping.
We'll be like, okay, we're going to eat at home. This is our goal. Our goal is that we are going to eat at home almost every day of the week. And we go grocery shopping one time. And then we're like, oh yeah, we're doing it.
For a whole week.
We like made all of our meals and I did all the dishes and we're doing it. And then it comes to that next week and we didn't go grocery shopping. So we eat out and then we eat out for 3 years.
Oh yeah. And then it really is like 3 years.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh wait, remember how we were going to eat at home? Let's do that.
Yeah.
And then the whole cycle starts again. And honestly, we're still in that cycle.
And that is because we have never prioritized it.
Right.
And we've never added it to the calendar.
Yeah.
If we added it to the calendar of make grocery list, grocery shop every, Monday at 6 p.m., whatever it is.
Right. If it was the same every week.
Yes. Yeah. Then we would do it. But because we never were intentional, we didn't put intention behind it. We didn't put it on the calendar.
And it's my least favorite thing in the world anyway.
Right. And that's the thing is it's easy to be intentional about things that we love.
Right. I do enjoy not spending a ton of money on eating out, though. When I look at our bank account,
Right.
on the times that we do cook at home, I'm like, hey, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just look at it like that.
I think another point to bring up is that balance is not the same thing as rest.
Yes.
And the thing that all of us have to remember and remind ourselves is that rest is ultimately the healthiest thing we can do.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was trying to say at the very beginning of this podcast is that allowing yourself to just sit for a minute or be bored or whatever is where true creativity comes from. And it's where like ideas happen. And it's not, it's intentional. It's not mindlessly scrolling Netflix and watching whatever movie is on there.
Right.
That's not rest, in my opinion.
Right.
I do think that there is a place for that, but that's not the rest that I think we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about intentional rest. And I don't think any of us know how to do that.
Yeah.
It's hard and it takes a lot of intention.
Because you can still get to the point where you are juggling, you're balancing, and you're doing this, thing of balancing your life where you're working hard and you're playing hard and you are, spending the amount of time you need with your kids or with your spouse or, with your extracurriculars.
Yeah.
And your work. But you can still burn yourself out because you cannot maintain that level of intensity for very long. You could potentially do it for years.
Right.
But at some point, you are either going to be emotionally drained and burned out, or your body is going to do it for you.
Or both.
Or both. And so if you end up making it years and you go 15 years at this intensity, there's a possibility that you will just have a heart attack and your body will say, like, you need to stop.
Or maybe you end up hating what you're doing. Yeah. And nobody wants to hate what they do.
Right.
So just avoid that by giving yourself a little bit of space sometimes.
Right. And then, if it's not your body telling you, with a hard, like, hey, bro, slow down.
Yeah.
Is also just to your point that you can get burned out doing something that is your dream.
Yeah.
Is your passion.
I mean, I think there's plenty of examples of that. We don't really need to name any of it. Like everybody knows examples of people who have burned themselves out doing things they love because they didn't do it with, not with intention. They just didn't balance it like it should be balanced. Right. Like nobody who is, I think, like a top level CEO, whatever, they're not at their job 100 hours a day. What do they take vacations, they take date nights, they like make sure that they're doing things well, and that includes things outside of work
and just genuinely taking rest.
Yes.
And making space outside of this thing that you truly love. Like, you love your work and you want to spend more than 40 hours, 60 hours, 70 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The hours don't matter.
Not at all.
It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with outside of that time. Are you truly, resting? Right. And, I think that some parts of it can be rejuvenating, I guess, in taking time to do things that energize you. But then other times it's like the work itself really genuinely does energize you, but that doesn't replace rest. Right. And whenever I say rest, I'm talking about sleep. One, there is no reason that you should be sacrificing your sleep on a consistent, regular basis. Right. Obviously, every once in a while, you have to stay up late, you have to get up early, it's just life. Like, sometimes you have to sacrifice a few hours of sleep. But if you live your life...
Right. If you're always up till 3 a.m. working, there's probably a problem.
Right. And think about the quality of work that you're doing at that time, whenever your brain is, that cog is like slowing down, and it's like, yeah, oh, go you stayed. I stayed up until 2 a.m. Getting this done, and it's like, well, the well-rested brain got it done at 4 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So, us in this American like culture of like glorifying the overworker.
Mm-hmm. And again, this isn't a blanket statement. Obviously, there are going to be times when you have to put in more hours, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's going to happen sometimes,
Yeah,
but that shouldn't be the norm.
Yeah. And also we just, as our society has done a very good job at praising those
Yes.
who kill themselves for work.
Right. I mean, it's all over Instagram, like pulled an all-nighter.
Right.
Or the coffee, like all the coffee drinking and like, it's so ingrained in culture that you don't even need examples. Like it just is what it is. And it's hard to watch, I think, for me.
Right. And if you had a project-based job where you have the freedom to, where your job doesn't dictate that you clock in at 5 and you clock out clock in at 9 and clock out at 5.
Yeah.
And it's a project-based thing. The person who is somebody who is an efficient, highly focused worker, and they clock out every day at 3 p.m. because they got their stuff done, typically is not the person who gets praised or even like considered for promotion, whatever, because they leave early every day.
Yeah.
But even though they get their stuff done, and it is maybe even of greater quality, and this is just an example. I'm sure there are many, many stories that disprove this, but I just in the American societal culture, it's like that person probably doesn't get praised or promoted in the same rate as the person who stays till 8 p.m. every day, working seemingly, more hours and busting their butt to, make sure that the stuff is done, whenever one, grinding themselves into the ground probably isn't producing the quality work, even though their quantity time is more. But even if the product at the end of the day is the same, the person who stayed till 8 is probably getting praised more than the person who left it at 3.
For sure.
Even though it's the same product at the end of the day. Whenever we should be saying, how are you so good at your highly focused, highly intentional work and actually getting it done? That's the person that we should be modeling our lives after.
Right.
Probably.
I would assume so. You definitely don't see people like, I only worked 4 hours today because I was efficient,
Right.
They're like, pulled another all-nighter. Look at me.
Because that is exactly, if you were to post that on Instagram and you're like, that exact thing, you're like, I worked smarter, not harder, and I only spent 4 hours at work today. Like, that's not getting the likes of somebody who is posting a picture of them with their coffee in the clock in the background at 11 p.m. and be like, working late, hashtag hustle grind. Like, that's getting the likes.
Right. Exactly. And that is...
But what life do you actually want to live?
Oh, I agree. I 100% I think that on some levels we have the work life ideas wrong. I think they're skewed. I don't think that we shouldn't work, or that we shouldn't love to work, or that we shouldn't create great work ethic in ourselves. Like, that is not at all what work-life balance is about. Work-life balance is about working really well and really hard on the things you love, but not killing yourself in the process.
Right.
And I don't understand why that's hard to understand.
Right.
I don't know why I feel so, and this is personal, I feel so like, please understand, please don't think that I mean that you shouldn't work, because I don't know why I feel that in me by saying that.
I think because it goes into the culture.
Yeah.
I feel like right now, it's kind of like in this conversation, I kind of feel this twinge that we need to say but that none of this is to say that we don't work hard and we don't do all this stuff.
Exactly. I feel that.
But I shouldn't have to say that.
Yeah.
Because the product we produce should speak for itself.
Right.
It's like, it's not like recording and editing 3 videos a week just happen in an hour.
Right.
This podcast, it doesn't take just the hour it takes to record it.
Right.
It's like everything else that we do, all of the time it takes it takes so much time to do all of the stuff that we do.
Right.
That nobody will ever see.
Yeah. But I feel like it does feel like I have to defend a little bit. Like, wait, don't misunderstand. Don't think that I'm lazy, please. Right. It's just that I think, you know what I mean? I feel like I have to defend our work ethic when we're talking about not working 100% of the time, which is weird. And like, I don't know. I don't know. It's weird.
Whenever in reality, what I would love for us to be bragging about is I get 8 hours of sleep every night.
Right.
I actually only have to work 5 hours a day.
Right.
And I, spend ample amount of time on my relationship.
Yeah.
It's plural.
Yeah.
And, but that's not valued in our culture.
It's not. Yeah. And I mean, I know I'm guilty of it too. I know I'm guilty of falling into that. And I know I'm guilty of, I guess, promoting it in a certain way. Although I do try very hard not to promote or not to, humble brag, I guess. Like I'm very, very conscious of that because I know what I value, and I know that I don't want to promote something that I don't value. And so even if it'll like make me feel validated, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think, it's just, you go on social media, on Instagram or wherever, and that's all it is. It's all people humble bragging about how much they're working, but not about like, well, okay, well, sure, yeah, you worked 12 hours on that, but if you had just done this thing, you could have worked 7. Like, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about how, like, if you would just drink water instead of 12 cups of coffee, like, you would need the 12 cups of coffee because you slept 8 hours and you drank water. That's all we need for our bodies to feel like good is 8 hours of sleep, water, and some veggies. But for some reason, all we know how to promote is coffee. Nothing against coffee because I love drinking tea. I drink caffeine on a very regular basis, but caffeine is a drug that is enhancing. Like, it is a drug. The actual way that it affects our body is like a drug. And we're just like, we're cool with it. You know what I mean? It's crazy to me. So I feel like we need to defend our work ethic, or I feel like I have to defend our work ethic in this conversation, but
in reality, we shouldn't.
In reality, that shouldn't be the thing.
What we should promote, and hopefully what we do promote, and what we do model in our lives is, work-life balance.
I try to do whatever that means.
But ultimately, living a healthy, balanced life, and hopefully we live a modeled life that we prioritize relationships.
Right.
And there are many different studies that prove that people who engage in deep, meaningful relationships throughout their life live longer, more and healthier lives.
Yeah.
And there's just because there is an actual brain-body connection to whatever, I don't know, whatever chemicals, whatever happens in our brain whenever we are truly making human connections and we are truly having deep, meaningful relationships. And, maybe there is some, I guess, causation in there of that whenever you are in deep relationship, that means that you can live better life because you have a support system that whenever, you have something that you need help with, you have people there, you have financial, I guess, backup, you have, whatever it is.
It alleviates some stress.
Alleviates stress in that way. Maybe that is part of the thing that, leads to the healthier, happier life, or, maybe it is more ethereal, like.
Yeah,
more...
I think it's ethereal. I think, well, it's just kind of like that, if you don't feel like smiling, just smile because eventually it'll come naturally. And I think that's that's kind of, I think, what like relationships, they just make your life smile. You know what I mean? like it's not about this backup system per se. I mean, it is, but whenever you're just like making regular jokes with a friend, how much better do you feel? You know, you don't sit there and make jokes with yourself. That's weird, you know? But if there's somebody else sitting across the table from you, I mean, you're going to laugh, and laughing makes you happier. It is scientific. And I think, I hope that's what we promote.
Right.
I hope that's what we stand for. And I think it is. And I think on a personal level, I think I've even maybe gone the opposite sometimes, that like I sacrifice my work to value people. And I don't know.
But if that is what is on your personal, priority list, whenever you make out the things that are your things, not for anybody else, that you prioritize, and you put relationships above work, then it's not
bad.
Right. Then you're doing exactly what you intentionally sacrificed a little bit of work for the people.
Yeah.
Because that was your goal in the first place. So you shouldn't feel bad about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think in the culture that we live in obviously values work, and I want to work hard, whatever. But I have multiple times in my life said like, look, I'm not the best, whatever, writer, videographer, photographer, blah, 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 blah. But I hope I love people well. That's it. Like that's what I hope. I hope that the people who know me know that I love them and would do whatever I need to do to support them. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't feel bad about it. Thanks.
And that's...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, is that I hope that is what we are modeling while we are trying
to build our dream.
Well, while we're trying to do that. Like,
right.
We're not saying like, hey, look at our life and model yourself after it. We're more so saying, here's what we're trying to do. Yeah. You can follow us on this journey. Because, I mean, I haven't achieved work-life balance. I haven't put relationships, I haven't valued relationships in the way that I ideally would want to. Right. I haven't, treated you in the ideal way I wanted to treat you. I haven't spent the ideal amount of time with God that I want to. I haven't like done as much work as ideally I would want to.
Right.
Like, so it's not about saying like, here's the path to my success. It's more so I think that most of all of our video and audio content is literally just narrating our journey through our goal of trying to live emotionally, mentally, spiritually healthy lives.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's like we fail every day and we succeed every day.
Right.
So I think that's more so the thing.
Yeah, totally.
One thing before we wrap up is that I totally forgot. We were on the track of talking about rest. Is that is one thing that we put on our calendar as well.
Yes.
That and this is something that we've been haven't done well in years past, but we have made the decision this year. One of our goals, I guess, is that we are going to actually take a day off.
A full day.
And it's like we've always taken some sort of like weekend or weekend day, and it's kind of like we take it easy that day.
Yeah.
But we still will do maybe a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Or
we'll be like, well, we don't really need to do too much today, but let's just record the podcast.
Right, exactly. And so, I mean, which is funny, because I think for a lot of people, it's like, setting all this up and recording a podcast on your day off. Yeah. That would literally be what we would do.
Yeah.
Even to us, it was like,
it doesn't feel like
work. I mean, it was just kind of like, it's fine.
I like sitting here having conversations,
But I think at the end of the day, if we truly value rest and we know what it means in our life to have rest, to have boredom, to create that space in our life, we need to put it on the calendar. And so we blocked out all of Sunday that it is no screens, no social media, no work. The only thing that we, do that day
Right.
is we go to church in the morning, and then the rest of the day is just for
Reading.
personal and relationship. And
Yeah.
so, whether it's really whatever you want to do with your time
Yeah.
that doesn't involve a screen,
Yes.
including all social media.
Yes.
And so if you see us on social media on Sunday, you can call us out, because our goal this year is to not be on social media
I feel like
all
I'll be bad at it for at least a little bit.
on Sunday. So if we're liking your stuff or, commenting or posting or doing anything and it's on Sunday, you can just comment and be like, hey, Cody,
what are you
doing? It's Sunday.
You won't have a problem with it, I don't feel like. You do have a pretty good handle on social media and self-discipline. I, on the other hand, have a very bad handle on social media.
Yeah.
So it'll take me a couple weeks to detox, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And so I think it's just creating that space for rest. And I also think it's creating that space for boredom.
Yeah.
And creating the silence that we completely miss in our current day and age. Like, we used to have actual silence in our brains, where our brains could make these connections with, random things, which create these creative ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, just whenever we were kids, what did you do whenever you were bored? You went outside and played. But what did that ended up like engaging your imagination, and you would create these like stories of you in the tree house, and you would, like create this whole other world, right? We don't have that now. So or we could have that, but now we're adults and have to do it ourselves. So I think that's kind of the point, is giving your brain that space to just imagine and then make the connections and see what comes of it.
Yep. And I think one quick argument for that is, an argument that somebody may have against that is I'm too busy. I can't take a day off, because if I take a day off, then I'll be a day behind, whatever. I think, obviously I don't know your situation. I don't know, anybody's thing. It's more so maybe I'm going to give you a thought and then also maybe challenge you to try it, in that if you were, instead of working through that day and spending those hours working on it, if you were to actually take a day and truly rest.
Again, not just mindlessly watch Netflix.
Right. If you binge watch an entire season of a Netflix show, you're probably going to be just as tired if you were to spend that time working.
Your brain didn't rest.
If you truly rested and then you went into work the next day, I would say that most likely you could get the amount of work you would have done on Sunday and Monday done on Monday, because you go into it with a truly fresh, rejuvenated brain that you're going to do smart, highly focused, intentional work.
Yeah.
Versus the work that we do as people whenever we don't actually give ourselves time to rest, that it's basically half-time work. And so it takes us twice or three times as long to do it. It's not the quality that we would actually want it versus doing highly intentional, focused work.
Absolutely.
And, if you try it and you get a day behind, you can just email me and let me know, and I'll just put it in the I don't care file, because at least you got a day of rest, which matters more than your day of work.
Yeah. I think we just get so worried about being behind that we forget that we won't be.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. Whatever is left over at the end of the day will be there the next, and it's not going to hurt anybody. You don't need to work till 11 p.m.
But do get out there and be a high achiever.
Yes.
And
have a great work ethic.
Be a high achiever.
Do the things.
Actually, we can just go back to our motto.
Yeah.
We haven't actually said it in a while, but we put it on t-shirts because we truly believe in it, of work hard, but love harder.
Yes.
That is, if that is what you take away from ever spending a moment without us or our content, I would love for that to be the thing that is stuck in your life, is that work hard, love harder.
Yes.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Deeply Curious. As a reminder, it is brought to you by B&H Photo Video. You can check them out by clicking on any of the links in the description of any of the gear that we are using. Also by shop.deeplycurious.fm. You can get yourself some Deeply Curious branded merchandise or a t-shirt or a hoodie that says "Work hard, love harder."
It just says love harder, but
Correct.
but the work hard is
yeah.
understood.
The work hard is implied.
Yeah. Implied, that's it.
Yes. Because ultimately love harder.
Yeah.
But it is work hard, love harder. Get yourself some stuff that says love harder on it, and that'll be the end of this episode. We'll see you next week.
Bye.